For centuries, the philosophical tradition treated rhetoric with deep suspicion. The baseline was set by Plato, who dismissed public persuasion as a dangerous knack, a form of cookery or flattery that lacked a definite subject and preyed on the ignorant. This bias assumes the orator's only goal is to outwit an audience. In this view, rhetoric is a weapon of concealment, using emotional manipulation and smoke and mirrors to bypass logic entirely. Aristotle treats rhetoric as a techne, a rigorous methodical art form. He defines the art as a diagnostic capacity, the systematic ability to see the available persuasive potential in any given case. He calls rhetoric the antistrophos, or counterpart, to philosophical dialectic. They are two sides of the same rational coin, but they operate in different environments. While dialectic tests logical consistency in the controlled space of academic debate, rhetoric navigates the public sphere of assemblies and courtrooms. The public square deals with contingent matters, whether to build a border wall or convict a citizen. Absolute scientific knowledge is impossible here. There is only room for doubt and divided opinions, a state Aristotle called amphidoxine. Because of this, Aristotelian rhetoric operates as a necessary epistemology for the public sphere. When absolute proof is unavailable, it provides the structural framework needed to engineer a reasoned public judgment. Aristotle divides the tools of public speech into two categories. First are the artless means of persuasion, pre-existing facts like witness testimony, written contracts, or evidence gathered under torture. The second category is technical means. These do not exist before the speaker takes the podium. They are manufactured through the speech itself, utilizing a systematic method. This method is built on three technical pillars of persuasion, known as the pistes: ethos, pathos, and logos. All three work together to support a single target, the formation of a judgment, or precis. Ethos is persuasion through the character of the speaker. This relies on the credibility actively constructed during the speech. The orator must demonstrate prudence, virtue, and goodwill to the audience in real time, independent of their pre-existing reputation. These technical means are applied across three distinct genres of public speech: the deliberative genre, the judicial genre, and the epididactic. Deliberative speech occurs in political assemblies, where audiences must judge the future advantage or harm of an action. Judicial speech takes place in courts, where juries must judge whether a past event was just or unjust. In any of these arenas, public judgment is a composite of the speaker's credibility, the audience's emotional state, and the core argument. To secure a stable verdict, the rhetorician engineers all three pillars simultaneously. This brings us to a tension in Aristotle's text. Early in the work, he condemns emotional manipulation as speaking outside the subject. Yet later, he dedicates a massive portion of the rhetoric to instructing speakers on how to arouse emotions. Aristotle's account of pathos treats emotion as a cognitive process. Feelings alter our judgment because they are triggered by specific, logical beliefs about the world. Take his definition of anger. To Aristotle, anger is a precise equation, an undeserved slight, directed against oneself or one's friends, accompanied by pain. To invoke this emotion, a rhetorician does not rely on theatricality. They use the speech to demonstrate to the audience that these exact definitional criteria have been met. If the speaker fails to prove the slight was undeserved, if the evidence shows the insult was earned, the logical circuit breaks and the anger evaporates. You cannot make an Aristotelian audience angry without logically demonstrating the strict conditions for anger. Arousing passion is tethered directly to logical proof. That logical proof is anchored by the body of persuasion, the enthymeme. This is the master architectural unit of rhetorical logic, serving as the public equivalent of a scientific deductive syllogism. It differs from scientific deduction in its raw material. A strict syllogism derives conclusions from universally true axioms. An enthymeme deduces conclusions from endoxa, the reputable, commonly accepted assumptions already held by a specific audience. The argument relies on the audience supplying that underlying assumption. They provide the missing piece of the logical circuit themselves. Historically, this led to a persistent mistranslation, the idea that an enthymeme is defined merely as an incomplete or short syllogism with a suppressed premise. Aristotle's point is that chaining dozens of premises together will lose an untrained jury. Brevity is a functional adaptation to the intellectual limits of a crowd. By utilizing the audience's own convictions as structural load-bearing elements, the enthymeme forces them to participate in the deduction. They follow the evidence and persuade themselves. To construct these enthymemes, a rhetorician needs a system for finding the right premises. Aristotle provides this through a concept called topoi, or places. The term originates from an ancient mnemonic technique where orators would memorize a speech by associating ideas with physical locations in a house. Aristotle abstracts this, turning spatial locations into logical blueprints. A dialectical topos is a formal, topic-neutral argumentative scheme. It acts like a mathematical formula for reasoning. Dropping the specific facts of a case into this general mold allows the speaker to generate a structurally sound premise ready for deployment. These schemes generally produce two types of rhetorical premises: probabilities, known as ecos, and signs, known as semia. This chart details the logic of signs. Some signs are necessary, called tekmerion, and act as unbreakable proofs. For instance, if a woman has milk, she has given birth. Other signs are refutable. Someone breathing rapidly might have a fever, or they might just be exercising. Aristotle contrasts these common, general molds against the specific facts, or idia, that are unique to subjects like politics, physics, or ethics. Equipped with a database of topoi, a speaker can methodically mine any subject for every available argument. Rhetorical invention becomes a repeatable, structural science. This scientific approach establishes strict boundaries. Aristotle insists that technical persuasion must be derived from the case at hand. He explicitly forbids speaking outside the subject through slander or irrelevant appeals. He argues that distorting a judge with irrelevant anger or pity is like a carpenter deliberately warping their own yardstick before measuring a board. The instrument of judgment itself is corrupted. This demand for precision extends into how the argument is spoken, which Aristotle terms lexis, or style. The primary virtue of prose style is clarity, because the sole function of a speech is to make a state of affairs understandable to the listener. The orator must strike a balance. Standard vocabulary ensures clarity, but causes a flat presentation. To hold the audience's attention, speakers must integrate unfamiliar terms, avoiding inappropriate theatricality. Aristotle presents metaphor as a cognitive instrument, a specific mechanism for triggering learning. Look at his model of proportional analogy. He maps old age in a lifespan to evening in a day, arriving at the evening of life. Processing this unfamiliar phrase forces the audience to identify the shared characteristic, synthesizing a new understanding of the subject. From the cognitive mechanics of human emotion to the logical mapping of a metaphor, Aristotle strips public discourse of its manipulative mysticism. He proves that even when dealing with uncertain futures and human passions, public persuasion remains a rigorous exercise in rationality and structured judgment.